Good evening, wrestling fans. I'm Jeff Upson alongside Eric Knopsnyder, and if you were just listening into the War Up on the Whippeal podcast, you would have known I was just live with Greg Warnock, and we talked about some of the action that happened this weekend out here in the Whippeal. But on the Power Hour, we're kind of just we're gonna talk a little bit about everything, Eric. But most notably, the big news about some top wrestlers such as Ryan Crookham and Eric Gibson, Mason Gibson, what their eligibility looks like for this year potentially, and what we know thus far. But before we get into that, Eric, we were finally back in wrestling. I mean, I was at a couple duels in the first week after the shutdown. The ban was lifted. I was up at Reynolds for some dual meets, but this was our first actual individual tournament, if you will, that happens at the Monroeville Convention Center. First, Eric, let me get your thoughts on the tournament itself. What was your thoughts when you walked in and you saw 8 mats on the floor? It must have been kind of like nostalgic.
Yeah, it was really nice to be back. I mean, like you said, it had been so long, and I'll admit I was a little hesitant. I wasn't sure how it was going to work. If it was going to be spread out enough. How the people were, but it didn't feel like there were many people in there at all. They kept the crowd size down. As you said, the mats were really spread out, so it never felt like there were a ton of people there. That you were really too close to anyone. I thought it worked out really well, and the wrestling was phenomenal.
Yeah, the wrestling was great, and the way Paul Myers set it up was they split them down into two different divisions. Originally, he had, I believe, 32 teams, 16 and 16, but with COVID, excuse me, and everything, it was kind of hard to do that. So they split it up as best they could, and yeah, I thought it worked out pretty well the way that the everything, time wise at least. I think people got out of there pretty quickly, right? I don't think there was any complaints about people being there too long, but they had to split it up so they could basically run 2 tournaments back to back, right? You ran the first one and then immediately after that cleared out the gym and got the second one going. First tournament, Division 1, it was noticeably better, had some better wrestlers in it, but still the Division 2 had maybe not the depth, but it had a lot of good wrestling. And we got to call basically 4 hours of wrestling, Eric. And towards the end, it got a little rough. But we did it. We got through it, right?
Yeah, and I think going back to what you said about having to change from the one tournament to 2, I think if we've learned anything over the past 10 months or so, is that all the rules that we thought we used to know about how everything had to be set in stone, and we were going to know weeks in advance how everything was going to happen. I think we've all learned to adapt and go on the fly. So yeah. Most people thought this was going to be one tournament where everybody was going to have a chance to, even though they were in pools, kind of place out at the end of the day. And then the day or two before it, they had to change things up and go with 2 separate tournaments with pools in that. So we've all learned to be adaptable. I know I talked with Paul ahead of it, and he said the coaches were great about it. It's just the way things are today, and that's the way things are going to probably go for the rest of the season. That we're going to have to adapt on some things and just be as flexible as possible to make sure we can do as much as we can. And yeah, you were right. It ended up being long because we essentially had semifinals and finals for 2 different tournaments that we were on the air for. And I learned that, I don't have quite the stamina to say my attention span and my language skills, I guess, start to falter after a couple hours of that. But we got through it, and hopefully everybody enjoyed the broadcast that we did.
So what's my excuse then? Why can't I speak too well? You act like I'm always under pressure or something, I guess.
No, you're fine, Jeff. I envy your ability to recall things. Like you can tell me, oh yeah, that kid placed 3rd in the state last year, and he was 6th the year before, and I'm like, yeah, I don't remember any of that stuff.
I just remember he was good.
Yeah,
he was good. Yeah. So that was it was. There was a lot of fun, to cover wrestling. It was a lot of fun, just to talk about, everyone that was there, and there was, there was I mean, you looked at the amount of state medalists there and state qualifiers. There was a ton of top end talent, a lot of Division I recruits that were there. I love dual meets, and I have nothing but, I love the way dual meets have really flourished during COVID, but it was fun to kind of see, the individual aspect of it and get to see some of these guys, individually just do really well. So, and there was a lot of talent there, right? We had a couple state ranked teams there. We had several big name schools, AA and AAA. I love the fact that they kind of mixed it up with AA and AAA. But that wasn't the only action that I'm sorry.
And a national prep power and Malvern Prep.
I mean, Malvern Prep was just unbelievable. I was impressed with a lot of, I was impressed with Fort LaBeouf. Fort LaBeouf, I thought, looked pretty good. I thought Norwin looked good. Hempfield looked good. There was, Commodore Perry had a bunch of studs. I feel like they were on the mat all the time. That wasn't the only action, though, that happened this weekend. There was a lot of dual tournaments that happened this weekend. We had talked about in War Up the Seneca Valley duels. Cannon Mac hosted some duels. And a lot of, again, you look at the top teams in the state. Bethlehem Catholic beat Easton in a dual meet. Waynesburg had to shut down because of COVID for a little bit. Seneca Valley continued their winning ways. I've been impressed with them ever since Hempfield, or ever since they beat Reynolds, and I think they are really the team that's going to challenge Waynesburg. You had Cannon Mac that wrestled in their own duels. They lost to Cathedral Prep, so that was a number 10 beating a number 7 in the state in the dual team rankings. Cathedral Prep had a couple holes. They had a forfeit at 6 in heavyweight. Latrobe pushed it with them. We had talked about this at Midwinter Mayhem. We had a state champion lose. Vincent Kilkeary goes up to 120, loses to Chad Ozias from Connellsville. So probably one of the first state champions to lose, other than Ethan Bergnick from Hempfield, who fell in the finals to Spencer Barnhart, who Eric has dubbed Mini Nick Feldman. Right, you have couple new favorites. You got Brian Finnerty from TJ, who you love, and now Spencer Barnhart from Malvern Prep.
It's fun to see these guys that I don't get to see all the time. My focus is generally AA, and I've got a lot of the Southwest region in AA that I try to focus on and keep an eye on everything that's happening there. And that's some great wrestling. But as wonderful as Pennsylvania is, there are so many other areas that I don't get to see on a regular basis. So just to see a guy like Finnerty from AAA, from Thomas Jefferson, to see him in that almost nonchalant style that he's just never flustered out there, looks like he's just kind of hanging out, having fun, and putting up points and winning matches. And then Malvern Prep, those are guys that we've gotten to see at the Surge over the years in some different places, but still don't get to see them a ton. And then to see Spencer Barnhart, who's just I joked with you yesterday asking if Malvern Prep has a weight room, because man, I can't imagine anybody in the state has a better weight.
Yeah.
And just how stacked most of the guys in their lineup are. I mean, they must spend a ton of time in the weight room.
Yeah, Jack Waymeyer, another guy I was impressed with this weekend. Nick Feldman obviously beats state champion Dayton Pitzer. So we had 3 state champions, if you want to count them, going down. Pitzer losing to Feldman after beating Cole Waitman from Bell Vernon. Just looking at some of the other top teams in the state competing, Central Mountain and Williamsport had a nice duel. That's 2 Northwest Regional Powers, District 6 versus District 4. You had Central Mountain came away with a 39-30 victory. Both Bauer twins got wins. In fact, Braden Bauer beat Griffin Walliser from Central Mountain 8-3. Freshman Luke Simcox from Central Mountain got a forfeit. Nick Miller of Central Mountain really had a big win over Charlie Crew of Williamsport 5-2 at heavyweight to kind of secure it for the Wildcats. I think Central Mountain, Bellefonte, State College are all, and even Mifflin County. I think District 6 AAA is pretty stacked. I'm excited to see those teams kind of all shake it out and figure out who's going to come out on top. You got to think with State College, right? You get the Manville brothers, Pearson and
Mm-hmm.
Carson. That's a huge boost to them, right? That adds a lot of star power, a lot of depth. You have a couple incoming freshmen there as well. You know, can they battle? And you know, I think I'm pretty high on them. If you look at the team rankings, I'm pretty high on State College. I have them ranked number 10th or 9th in the state currently. Um, you know, I'm just excited to see how State College is able to fit all these guys in a lineup, because you can have all the best guys, but can you all get them in a lineup, right? And we've seen that happen time and time again with some of the top teams. Bethlehem Catholic being one of them. They have Ashton Campbell down below, Dante Frenzy and Tyler Kasak, kind of all in that 120 to 126 range. Ashton Campbell wrestled yesterday against Easton, beat Braxton Apello. That was a big win for him. So you know, it's you have the depth, but can you move it around? State College is one of them. I'm curious to see how they do. In fact, they'll be wrestling Central Dauphin, and I believe this week. But as Greg and I were saying in the War Up podcast, it's so hard to keep track with the schedule. Like Cannon Mac and Waynesburg are supposed to wrestle this Wednesday, and Smout pushed back to next Wednesday. So it's hard to really keep, you know, a pulse on who's wrestling and who's wrestling when, just due to COVID with shutdowns and just schedule changes all the time. So it's very difficult to do, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're going to see a lot of that where honestly, most of the time, like at this point in the season, I've usually got, I get the schedules for my local schools in November, put everything together, you know, I have a daily schedule of everything that's going on and then broken down by teams. And this year I didn't even ask coaches for schedules because I know so many of them don't know what's going on yet. A few of the ones that are really good and really have planned everything out have sent me schedules, and they've got, you know, 15 events on there, but others I look online and I see like 3 dual meets on their schedule. So, you know, it's going to be really tricky to see. And I'm sure, again, flexibility is going to be the key, because I think you're going to see in a lot of leagues, what team A may have wrestled 8 dual meets and team B may have 3. You know, it's just going to, nothing is like we were used to before, where, you know, everybody had to have every dual meet wrestled and we're all going to have the same number and everything's going to be even. You know, I think by the time you get to the postseason, you're going to see some kids have 20 matches in and some have 3. So it's going to be really tricky. I know I've already been in some conversations about how seeding is going to work for postseason, because there's going to be a lot more input this year as far as, you know, in the past, they've tried to make it numbers based for individual seeding and team seeding, where you say, okay, formula, this is the formula we've got. You know, you get X amount of points for beating this team or this kid, and we're going to go almost strictly by that and maybe a few variances there. Now it's going to be a lot more input of people and saying, hey, look, you know, I know that this guy has only 4 wins, but he's really good, and we all know that. So he deserves to be a number 3 seed over someone who has 7 or 8 wins. You know, it's going to be a lot more judgment, I think, this season as we get down to it, and we're seeing that in our own rankings. You know, we still have kids that haven't wrestled a match yet, and others that have got 8 in already.
Yeah, and I think that just it's you know, locality where you're at proximity wise is going to, you know, be determining that, and schools getting shut down, right? We've already seen several big name schools get shut down. Wyman Seminary had to postpone their season. You know, the national preps is kind of up in the air right now. I'm not hearing a whole lot on that and what's going to happen with the national preps, but you know, schools out east, a lot of them are just now getting back to competition because of the shutdowns earlier on, and you know, COVID's a little bit more prevalent out in the east and in our urban cities. So yeah, like you said, we may be rolling into team postseason with guys that haven't wrestled hardly at all in official competitions. So as you were talking, Eric, I was just looking through some of the results from the weekend, and I forgot State College was at the Husky Duels at Mifflin County. They beat Mifflin County. State College did 47-15, and that was without Carson Manville and without Hayden Cunningham. But Pearson Manville did wrestle at 138, got a fall over Lucas Sheets. Lance Urbris was at 172. They got their freshman Nick Pavlyuchenko at 215, so he's in there, and yeah. So I think they're gonna. I think they're going to battle State College, but I think they're seriously going to need a full lineup if they want to hang with anyone outside of District 6, even Central Mountain. So there was a lot of wrestling this weekend, but a lot of it was duels, right? And if coaches don't get their stuff on track wrestling right away, it's hard for us to know what happened, right? And we do a lot of digging ourselves, but we can only do so much, Eric, and only dig so deep in order to get those results. As I mentioned, Bethlehem Catholic defeats Easton, right? Easton. So this was kind of interesting because the Karam brothers are now going back at it. It used to be Liberty versus Bethlehem Catholic. Well, Jody Karam has now taken over at Easton, and now Jeff Karam. Of course, both these coaches, they left their programs. Jeff Karam left last year, then came back. Now he's back. Now Jody Karam left Liberty. Now he's back at Easton. 41-15 was the score for Bethlehem Catholic over Easton. Easton's very young, as I mentioned. Ashton Campbell from Becca beats Braxton Appello. There was a couple other kind of close matches. Dante Frenzy beat Kyron Bryson by injury default. Bryson actually got the opening takedown in that match, but Bryson's a guy who's been banged up for a while. Becca, I mean, they look good they've got a lot of star power, but I don't know if they have quite as much as Waynesburg does, because Waynesburg is just, they're really stacked. In AAA, Waynesburg's that team to beat, but in AA, things are rapidly changing, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that pound for pound, probably one of the top two best wrestlers in the state of Pennsylvania is no longer at Notre Dame Green Pond, and that's two-time state champion Ryan Crookham, he is now out at Notre Dame Green Pond. He's heading back to Saucon Valley, where he spent his middle school and junior high years wrestling for Saucon Valley. And all reports out of Notre Dame was an ugly breakup. Some issues between wrestlers' parents and coaches, and I don't want to dive too deep into things with personal details, but it just sounds like a not so good situation. And having a guy like Ryan Crookham, and I think you mentioned it, Eric, was with the Gibsons, who we're going to talk about in a little bit as well. They were willing to potentially be ruled ineligible to leave Forest Hills and go to McCourt, right? And I think that kind of summed up how bad things had gotten in that situation. And it speaks volumes that Ryan Crookham, sophomore state champion, a freshman state champion, a season where we weren't really sure if we were going to have it, and now we do. And you're transferring in the middle of the season. I'd say the middle of the season, but really it's not the season, but middle of the year to Saucon. There's a very good chance he's ruled ineligible and he does not compete in the postseason. And if he's not, it opens up the ways for a lot of other people to transfer in season. I just don't understand. I guess it's being a 4-time state champion is a big thing in Pennsylvania, but I don't know. I'm a little perturbed by the fact that you're potentially giving up a chance to be a 4-timer. But if that situation is toxic enough, you're going to want out, just like you said with the Gibsons. So, which really sucks, because Ryan's a really good kid, and we had him on when he committed to Lehigh. He's a great kid. I've talked to his parents at tournaments. I've talked to him a lot. They're good people, and Matt Veras is a great coach. I've liked him from the time he stepped foot in Pennsylvania, and it's just a situation you don't like seeing. Kind of, it's mirrors the Forest Hills Bishop McCourt situation, because we like Mason, we like Eric. They're both good kids. They're both good people, right? And Jake Strayer's a great coach. So where's the disconnect here? And I'm sure some of these things may be petty, but for a lot of things, this has very real consequences. Ryan has to be fortunate that he's committed to Lehigh. He's still one of the top guys in the nation, but you're potentially giving up your junior year to leave a program. And it's interesting that Saucon Valley, because they were kind of a little upset that he wasn't there and went to Notre Dame Green Pond. And even last year when they wrestled in a dual meet, Chad Shirk kind of said, they put out a few girls against them, and there was some little animosity there between the two, and but they sure as hell would take Ryan back in the lineup. That's for sure. It's just sad, Eric, and you hate to see it. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. A lot of similarities between the Crookham and the Gibson situations. I don't know the details. You've got more insight into it in as far as Ryan's situation goes than I do. But you have to think that whatever happened there, they had to think that it was really serious, and as you said, toxic, that they couldn't make that arrangement work between Ryan and Notre Dame Green Pond, because there are really, really high stakes here. The potential of losing that postseason eligibility, the potential of throwing away the chance to be a 4-time state champ. Yeah, he's already got the commitment to Lehigh. We all know how good Ryan Crookham is. Even if he doesn't have a postseason, there would have been college coaches lining up at his door to get his services, no doubt about that. But yeah, if you're willing to make that sacrifice and say, hey, I know I could not be able to wrestle in the postseason. I know I may be throwing away that junior year and the opportunity to be a 4-time state champ, then this is something that's important enough to me that's worth the risk. And that's exactly what I was told with Eric, that the situation with Forest Hills had just gotten to the point where he was saying, hey, look, I want to be able to wrestle as a junior. Obviously I want to be able to compete for a state title, but if that goes away and I can't do that because of the transfer, then it's to the point where I just need to get a new start and get a fresh start and look at it that way and see if that is worth it. And that was the feeling that I got from them, was that even if he doesn't get the wrestle, it's still the better decision for him just where he is. And you also mentioned with him, same thing, like Jake Strayer is one of the best people you will ever meet. I know that I've had tons of people come up to me since the situation with the Gibsons and the Forest Hills staff and say, man, Jake Strayer he's a great coach. He was a great wrestler, but he's a better person. Like, he does everything the right way. And so many people have told me that look, Jake doesn't do things. He doesn't cut corners. He doesn't do things that aren't right. And so they were really upset at how this situation had gone and all the things that have happened. And unfortunately, there are no real winners in this. And if Eric loses his junior season, there's not going to be a winner in that either. But as it was on January 7th, the District 6 committee ruled that Mason would be eligible, even though he was a freshman, had started at Forest Hills this year and then transferred to Bishop McCourt, while Eric, who is a junior, and this is the PIAA rule that they passed before last season, right?
Yeah.
That if you transfer after your freshman season, you're automatically ineligible for the postseason that year. And so they knew this was a risk. They knew what they were facing, and they decided it was worth that risk. But I have talked to the Gibson camp, and they still feel confident that they can win an appeals process and get him that eligibility for the postseason. And I believe that's coming up early in February, that we'll see an appeals hearing there and see if he is going to be eligible. And then I believe after that, they can still appeal to the PIAA, right, if it doesn't go their way there.
Yeah, I mean, at least the protocol that by the letter of the law, I believe, is he can appeal to the district first, right? So I believe all districts, if not most of them, allow for an appeal to the district first, and then if that gets struck down, you can appeal to the PIAA. There are some districts where you would have to go directly to the PIAA after you are ruled ineligible. So I'm not sure if that we may have to get some clarification on that, whether that's an appeal to the PIAA or District 6, because that's a huge, that's a bigger deal, right? If it's a PIAA hearing, that changes things, and that's kind of, there's nowhere else after that, right? Josh Jeva from he was at Pennsbury and then transferred to Counts Rock South, and he was ruled ineligible, and they kind of took it to court, and that they never, he was never able to wrestle. So yeah, there's
a lot of big name guys have gone through that.
Oh, a ton. I mean, Zane Rutherford transferred
yeah.
from Lion Mountain to Benton, was ruled ineligible for a year. So yeah, I mean, is it the end of the world? Nope. Zane Rutherford turned out just fine, right? Without that year. In fact, he wrestled better after, because he won a world title in the cadet worlds after being ruled ineligible. So I mean, he did pretty well for himself. But then you've had other ones where, like, Cody Weirchach was ruled ineligible after transferring from Charleroi to Canamac, but then that was overturned by the PIAA. The PIAA. So I think Eric has a better shot now that Mason was ruled eligible. I think that helps their case more, that they ruled Mason eligible for the postseason. But as it stands right now, Eric is not competing in the postseason, right? And I would be curious to know if that meeting on the 6th or whatever you said, early February, is with the PIAA or not, because it's not long until the postseason starts, right? So they better expedite this stuff early on, so that way we can, they know whether they're going to be competed in the postseason or not. But that situation, Ryan Crookham over in Notre Dame, and I was a part of a program where we had like a superstar in Walter Peppelman, and there's always internal politics, right? Especially when you have a really tough a kind of national name wrestler in the room, and even for a program like Notre Dame where you have 5 or 6 guys that are all potentially Division I recruits, and all the good teams have their issues and have their roadblocks, if you will, and internal politics, right? I'm still pretty close with my head coach, Jeff Swigert, and he always says, he's like, Jeff, it's gotten worse, like just handling, parents, coaches, fans, all the people. It's like, before it was kind of more like leave, you kind of kept everyone away from it, and the parents were kind of okay with that. So I don't know. I hate to see it, but I understand that if it's almost like a bad marriage, it's like if it's not beneficial, and you want to go to couples counseling, sure, but if it's bad enough, you just got to sign on the dotted line and say we're moving on. We're cutting our losses. Again, you don't like to see it. I'm kind of curious to know about like the fallout from this, right? Because we saw it with Bishop Court a couple times, with them getting some transfers in, but we thought that program was DOA at one point because they didn't have anyone. I think you look at Crookham's situation is a lot different because he's going from Notre Dame to Saucon, which is well established. But for Forest Hills to Bishop Court, they have 3 guys on the roster, so
3 guys,
completely different.
The two Gibsons and Ethan Marcosi.
Right.
That's their roster right now.
Right. So, that's a little bit of a different situation that you find yourself in. So, the whole thing is intriguing, and it's again, the people that are probably going to suffer and pay for this are the wrestlers themselves, right? And I understand the PIAA is in a weird situation where they have to do what they have to do. I was talking to my dad about this, and he brought up a good point that Micah Parsons, he was at Central Dauphin. In fact, he was a good wrestler. He didn't wrestle in high school, but he was a really good youth wrestler. His older brother Terrence Parsons wrestled for Central Dauphin, but Micah probably going to be a first-round draft pick this year in the NFL draft out of Penn State. He played football for Central Dauphin, mid-season transferred to Harrisburg, and played for Harrisburg like the week after he transferred. Like 1 week he played for CD, the next week he plays for Harrisburg. That was several years ago now, but and everyone's saying like, what the heck? That's crazy. You just flip flop and go around, and how many wrestlers do we know that have wrestled at like 3 or 4 different schools? Artie Walsh is one that comes to mind, and there's some other guys out there like the Dugans. They wrestled for several different schools, and everyone always complains about it. But then everyone complains when someone's ruled ineligible. So like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, right, Eric? I don't know. I like cake.
Yeah, it's a situation where, like you said, it's difficult to say what the right decision is. I know we've gone back and forth on this over the years, and Pennsylvania seems to take a harder line on transfers than a lot of other states, because I know people across the country look at it and say, so what? Who cares if he transfers to a powerhouse school? Isn't that what you want? Is just the best things for your kids? If they have a better music program, you're fine with them transferring to a different school. But because there's an athletic competition involved, people get upset about it. So yeah, it's a little weird. I hope that it works out for Ryan and Eric. Obviously we want to see them compete. We want to see those really talented guys who are some of the best in the country. We want to see them at the PIAA tournament and see them, competing for state titles, just because selfishly we like watching them. We know how good they are, and it's entertaining. But it's not our place to really get involved in this in any way. The PIAA will sort all this out. But yeah, hopefully it's something that we can see these guys back on the mat for the postseason.
Yeah, and like you said, selfishly, we want to see that for ourselves because they are such good wrestlers and good competitors. And I haven't really heard anything else about the Notre Dame situation, about whether anyone else is leaving, because we see that a lot, where if one of the big names like a Ryan Crookham leaves a program, you sometimes see those other folks kind of trickle out potentially. Notre Dame got really good really fast with some guys, but they were also established before this, right? It's not like they started their program when Crookham became a freshman. So I'm sure Matt Veres is I'm sure he's able to deal with the situation. I mean, I can't imagine a meeting with a team like after your star wrestler transfers out. Those are some serious conversations you have with your wrestlers about, kind of staying motivated and staying focused and not letting the white noise in the background kind of affect your abilities on the mat. But you got to feel for these kids because it's not a great situation.
No, and this is such a weird year anyway. I mean, who knows if the COVID situation hadn't been the way it is. I don't know if the Ryan Crookham situation is any different or not, but I mean, we would have been a month into the season at this point. We would really have established what was going on with the season, and maybe that relationship would be a little different than it is right now. I don't know. It's just such a strange thing, and I wonder if guys are more willing to take a risk this year and say, hey, I may sit out the postseason, but who knows if we're even going to have a postseason. So it may be looking at that and weighing your chances and saying, okay, there's a chance I might not be able to wrestle. There's a chance even if I stay here and I'm miserable, I might not be able to wrestle. So why not, go for where I'm going to be happier and feel in a better place mentally. And then if I can wrestle, great. If not, then so be it.
And that's the big question, right? I mean, you weigh the pros and cons in this. And like you said, COVID, you throw in COVID. I mean, well, COVID kind of got thrown in before all this started, but I mean, that just is another piece of that puzzle. It's a conundrum of situation, and there is so much uncertainty still left, right? So, in my opinion, and I've been around long enough to know like how the PIAA rules on transfers and I, especially in the last couple years, seeing some of the things with football and basketball, I'm always kind of reading those meeting minutes from the PIAA to see like what they're doing. And wrestling is actually kind of low compared to the amount of basketball and football transfers that happen across the state, Eric, and get ruled ineligible. But I would be very surprised if one, District 11 rules him eligible, and two, if the PIAA rules him eligible, just because we're so far into the season. This is a situation that is kind of unprecedented with moving from, I don't know. I can't see it happening. It would set a bad precedence for the PIAA's rules that unless they can really prove hardship or they can show something else. And again, maybe there's a lot more to the story than I'm aware of, but I would think they would have to have a pretty solid argument, like it was for the best, for the welfare and safety of my kid. I don't know. On the face of it, though, I can't see how he's eligible for the individual postseason as Ryan Crookham. So the question to me is, what does that do to Notre Dame, Green Pond? Are they still the number one team in the state? Or does this make them, number two as compared to Reynolds? I still think Notre Dame is pretty darn good, even without Crookham. He is a huge part of their success, but they're still pretty solid throughout. Clearly that's a huge hit, and I think that makes the road a lot more difficult for Notre Dame, but they're still pretty darn good, Eric, if you look at their lineup, all the way through.
Let me ask you this. Are we actually going to have team state championships? Do you think that? I got asked that yesterday, and I thought, yeah, I think the PIAA still wants it. But then somebody brought up a really good point that, if you're a 106-pounder that's really been cutting hard to help the team out and make weight, and you lose in your sectional, are you going to hang around for another month to try to keep your weight down whenever you're not wrestling? Or on the flip side, if you're a really good baseball player and you lose in your sectional, are you going to be like, yeah, I'm going to continue to be a mediocre wrestler to help the team, or am I going to go get ready for baseball season, which is my primary sport, and get ready for that instead of trying to come back in the end of March for a wrestling tournament?
Yeah, so we've debated this a lot. We've debated on the War Up podcast, and you and I have talked about this before, but I personally don't think that there will be a team postseason like we're used to seeing in Hershey. I think the PIAA wants to. I also think that they're just not pulling the plug on it quite yet, but I think it has to do with scheduling and venues. So you have to have it at the Giant Center. You also have other sports such as basketball, that have to be at the Giant Center. So they may have to do it on like a Monday, Tuesday. There's so many obstacles that, in my opinion, they're just kind of waiting to pull the plug on it. Maybe that's a glass has half empty type of analogy to take a look at it, but I can't see it happening that way. I just, like you said, there's too many variables that. Yeah, some of the top teams, they'll be able to retain some of their
right.
lineup.
Becca High is going to be fine with
it. Yeah, Becca may be good. Nazareth may be good.
But yeah,
Chestnut Ridge is probably going to be good. But
yeah, right. Those guys, they're all committed. They're all in. But you're going to have some district champs who are going to lose people who just because they're in other sports, their track, their baseball, whatever. And that's just, it's not important to them at the end of March to be trying to hang around for that competition.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'd like there to be one. And Greg made a good point when we were talking about it on the War Up podcast is, it only affects a certain number of schools, because if you do the districts championships beforehand and you do your regional like pods, if you do as much as you can before the individual tournament outside of Hershey, and you only bring in like the top 6 teams or 4 teams to Hershey, you may be able to do it, and it affects a lot less kids that way. But traditionally it's going to be a lot different if there is one. And again, it's just my personal opinion that I think that they're eventually just going to say, you know what, we're just, as long as we get the individual tournament in, I think they may scrap the team tournament. Again, personal opinion, I have no inside knowledge. That's just kind of how I feel with the current situation. And the biggest thing is, so your top teams, right? So you have your top 10 teams in each division, AA and AAA. They have to essentially stay COVID free, right? We saw a lot of teams Waynesburg had to shut down for a couple days. You had Malvern Prep, who had lots of guys out from the Midwinter Mayhem because of contact tracing. You have all these different variables that are in place where, you basically have to say, hey, not only are you not in the individual postseason, you got to stay in a bubble until, we're ready to wrestle as a team. I just think there's too many hurdles here. And I think, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of teams opt out potentially. If
right, that's what I was going to say. You brought up a good point about the 10-day tracing and all that stuff, because I talked to an executive this week who said, "Hey, I told my coach, look, don't schedule anything for like 10 days prior to the start of the individual postseason because it's just not worth it. I mean, you want to try to get your guys as many matches leading up to that, but you can't take that risk that you're going to get traced, a week before individual districts or sectionals or whatever it is, and you might lose that opportunity to compete. So, that would be awful if your state medalist or hopeful title contender, whatever, is unable to go into the postseason because you wrestled a duel a week beforehand to try to get some more matches in, and he got exposed to COVID.
Yeah, well, I had that same conversation with some of the folks in Waynesburg, and it was like, they got shut down for 10 days or whatever it was, and you're saying, well, imagine if that happened before the team postseason, because Waynesburg, I mean, they have high expectations to win a state title, right? They were runners-up last year. They bring back everyone plus some, so, you take that away from them, like, that sucks, right? So you really got to be careful, and you're right. I can see that where coaches and administrators are saying, at least, like you said, the 10 days prior to the start of the individual postseason, I don't know if you not only don't schedule things, but you're like, hey, stay in your house, keep your weight down, good. Stay in the house where all the bad food is, and just, it's calling out your name, in the middle of the night, and you're like, no, I can't. Good luck. I don't know, man. There's a lot of different challenges, right? We have a lot of challenges when it comes to keeping kids on the mat, keeping teams competing and not shut down, keeping schools. I mean, I don't know about schools out your way, but most schools out here in the Pittsburgh area are back to the classroom. So I don't know what it's like out in Somerset County, Eric, but we're basically back all in the classroom. So, and again, what districts are going to be competing? Because like District 12 out of the Philly area, I've looked on track, like they don't have any rosters, any schedules at all. So I'm like kind of almost tempted to just be like pulling the plug on District 12 wrestlers. And I don't know, because you could have different, conferences or districts that just say, no more winter sports, right?
Yeah. And that's, I mean, like you said, you saw it with Wyoming Seminary. I mean, you could argue that there's not a bigger program in the country than Wyoming Seminary. Obviously Blair is in that conversation as well, but those are two of the biggest ones. And they're saying, hey, we're just not going to do it right now. It's just not going to work. So, it wouldn't be a shock to see that in the PIAA as well.
So on the same topic of COVID, did you notice this weekend, some wrestlers wearing masks, some not? But some of them were wearing them like as neck warmers. Like why? They didn't even go out onto the mat with the mask up. They just it just was around their neck. Like, I mean, I sometimes do that if like I'm at work and like we absolutely have to wear a mask. But like if I'm taking a drink or something, and I pull the mask down, I'll leave it down, but then I put it back up. Like it was just down. I'm like, why even wear it then? But it was weird because some wrestlers wore a mask and wrestled in masks. Others didn't. And we haven't had the issue yet of like a wrestler whose school says you shall wrestle your opponent. Like if your opponent doesn't have a mask on, you can't wrestle them. I haven't heard of that situation happening yet, but I think you got to start planning for that should that happen, right?
Yeah, it's a mess. I know I saw actually a comment on social media about an hour ago of somebody saying that the college wrestlers weren't forced to wear masks, whereas the high school ones. And I said, hey, I was just at Midwinter Mayhem, and almost all the wrestlers there, I saw a few wearing masks, but I did not see men. I know Jackson Arrington was wearing one during his final, but I can't remember too many other guys that were wrestling with a mask on in the finals. Do you?
No, I mean, I can go back and look, but there was very few, if any. And a lot of them are the Gators. Jackson
Right.
actually had like a mask on.
The actual mask. Yeah.
But a lot of them are just like the neck gaiters and look, I have neck gaiters, and they're more just like I don't know. I'm not. They're the ones that actually go around your ears stay on a little bit better, I guess, especially with headgear on, because it kind of traps in the mask a little bit. I haven't put on a headgear with mask, and I don't plan on doing that anytime soon. But yeah, it's weird because even when Greg and I did the Char Valley and Waynesburg match, Char Valley guys were wearing their masks, but one of them didn't. So like, I know a lot of people are saying, well, if you just say you have a medical condition, just say like it affects your breathing, and you don't have to wear it. But some people, some people want to wear the mask. Maybe maybe they have a family member that's susceptible, or I don't know. I mean, everyone has their own reasons. I'm certainly not going to tell anyone what they should and shouldn't do. I'm not that even though it is 2021, apparently that's like the thing to do, is to force your opinions and feelings on others. But
I was just talking to a coach not long ago, about an hour ago, and he brought up something that I hadn't even considered. I mean, I've long said that I'd hate to be a kid and have to be forced to wear a mask during a match, because God forbid you get put on your back and you've already got a torso on top of you that you're trying to get your air, but then to have a mask on as well and have that extra impediment to your breathing would be really difficult. And he said that what he's found, he said that in practice, he's wrestling big guys. He's a coach, and these guys are pretty sweaty. They're drenched by the end of practice. He said it feels like he's getting waterboarded if they're on top of him and that mask is there, because it's just soaking up the sweat through that, and then you're sucking in that sweat, so that can't be healthy either. It can't be a pleasant situation. And I'm really still stunned that as many schools as there are requiring the masks during competition.
So my good buddy Larry Chappell, who's somewhere wearing shorts right now, because I've never seen him not in shorts. Middle of the winter, -20, Larry Chappell's got shorts on. He just texted me and told me, he said Mount Lebanon, they only agreed to come to the Seneca Valley Duels if teams would wear masks when they wrestled them. So what he said was, when Seneca Valley didn't wear a mask unless they wrestled Mount Lebanon in a dual meet. So, I guess there are things like that happening where, you can only have certain, you may have teams that say like, hey, we have to have masks on. But what happens when Mount Lebanon wrestles, when Max Stout is wrestling in the regional tournament and he's wrestling a kid who doesn't have to wear a mask, hasn't worn a mask all year? Are you just saying like you got to forfeit that match, kind of like a girl, like a guy wrestling a girl?
Catholic school situation.
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't know, man. We've got a lot of challenges here, Eric. Speaking of girls, shout out to Andy Subishin. We should have got her on the show today, because she kicked some serious butt this weekend, man. Like, and she was in that finals match. I love Andy Subishin. I think she is a rock star. And you had mentioned it about, before, just having a girl wrestling and them like actually lasting a match or being competitive, and she's out there kicking people's butts.
Yeah, she's really good. And again, that's a testament to how far girls wrestling has come in Pennsylvania. Still a long way to go. We want to see it, the PIAA recognize it as a girls sport, so that they don't have to wrestle boys. And I think the growth would just be exponential then if you can get girls wrestling girls instead of having to compete against the boys. But yeah, Andy was phenomenal, did a really nice job. I know you could tell from her reaction to the match, she wasn't happy and losing that final. She really wanted that title. But yeah, she did a really nice job yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, she finished second at two of her first tournaments in the year. So, I mean, she's ranked in the state at 106 pounds in double A. So, we had the pleasure of hosting her and Ava Bayless at True Power in a women's freestyle match. She did lose to Ava Bayless, but she's down now to 106 pounds. Where, I'm very excited to see how she does, and I would just love if she qualified for the state tournament. That would just be amazing.
Yeah, unfortunately this year it's going to be really difficult.
Well, unfortunately this year is the year where only a certain number of people are going.
Because there are going to be a lot of good people that don't make it to the district tournament.
A lot of returning state medalists that don't make it, state qualifiers that don't make it. Side note, Larry Chappell just texted me and said, "Don't use my name." Ugh. Too late.
Sorry, Larry.
Sorry. Yeah, but the whole COVID thing it's like, man, I really don't know how we're gonna, navigate these waters. And where, I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record. Where's the PIAA in all this and the guidance? Because I know they're like, like France, like hands off. We're not gonna go there. well, at some point you got to you have to make some decisions on, yes, you're saying, well, it's up to individuals, and look, I'm all about that. I especially my political feelings, like I'm all about having individual freedom and choices, and especially, your situation in Somerset County is different than situation in Elk County versus Allegheny County, and so on and so forth. So I get that, but at some point you have to make a standard proclamation to say, like, okay, if this happens, this is how we're going to handle it, right? Because right now I think there's just a lot of uncertainty. And you talk to high school coaches, they're unsure, and they're the ones that I think should be the most knowledgeable and have the most information are the high school coaches, and you're not even seeing that happen. So and look, we're running out of time, Eric. We are way behind the 8 ball here, so there's only a matter of time till we'll be having some postseason discussions. So maybe you should get on that.
Yeah, it's a mess. As you said, most coaches, you ask a dozen coaches and it seems like you get a dozen different responses on exactly how things are going to go with the mask, when they have to wear it, when they don't. It's a mess.
It's a mess is maybe a little bit of an understatement there. But we got wrestling, right? It felt good to be back in a gym, not really a gym, but back in a beside a wrestling mat. It was nice to be around areas where there was wrestlers and wrestling mats.
And to see all the people that we haven't seen.
Yeah,
in so
and to
long.
see,
I mean that's one of the best things is we have so many relationships within the sport, and it was so great to be able to see these people that we haven't seen in almost a year because, we haven't been able to get out and do these things.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think. Like, I mean, you've been covering wrestling longer than I have, and I feel like I've seen these coaches, these wrestlers, these parents for so many years, and it's almost like a small little clique, right? You have that group, and you may not talk a lot in the off season. You may, once in a while see somebody and say something, but it's maybe a little bit not so formal. And I feel like at the Midwinter Mayhem, I wasn't even able to really talk to a lot of people because you and I were on the mic the whole time, and I'm running around like a madman trying to get some streams working and stuff. So I feel like I didn't even have the opportunity to talk with a lot of coaches and fans and wrestlers as much as I wanted to, but it did feel good just to be back in the mix of things. And imagine last year at this time, it was so different, right? And I'm sure next year it'll be different as well, but we're just, everyone is kind of thankful for the opportunities, but also a little bit apprehensive about the future. And I talked to Nick Feldman, and he was like, man, I just take it day by day. I just want to wrestle. Like, I take it day by day. And, right now the plan is for Powerade to happen inside the Monroeville Convention Center. I think they can pull it off. I think Frank Volcano and his team's they're going to be able to do it after seeing the Midwinter Mayhem, but you're going to have challenges. That's the word of the podcast today is challenges. And I think you're going to see a lot of things come up where, teams are backing out last minute. And honestly, that's why if you go to our website and you go to the Powerade website, you're not going to see names of teams that are competing because we're not really sure who's all coming yet. I mean, we have ideas of
flexibility.
Well, it is flexibility, and it's kind of, being able to adjust on the fly and, hey, this team dropped out. Is there any other team that wants in? And, well, they can travel outside of their district. Well, they can't, right? That's why Reynolds isn't able to go because they can't travel outside their district. So here's my question is, what happens when you go to states? Are you just saying it's okay to travel to Hershey, but you couldn't travel outside District 10 for the 2 months before that? I don't get it. Like,
right.
Do you expect the state tournament to come to your gym? Like these are the things that they should be answering. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too needy. My wife tells me that sometimes I'm being too needy. Maybe that's what I'm being right now.
She does.
Yeah, my pregnant wife. God bless her. What do you think, Eric? Well, hey, before we go, I want to stop in with Nick Fuller. Okay, we're gonna check in with the Tactical Mind real quick, and then we'll come back to wrap it up. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
This is the Tactical Mind, and I work with athletes in the field of sports psychology as a cognitive performance coach. Within 5 minutes of talking to a parent, they make the connection right away that this would be great for my kid to have when they're in college, when they're just going through the ups and downs of high school. Who wouldn't benefit from having more self-awareness? Who wouldn't benefit from having the ability to self-regulate our emotions and our counterproductive thoughts? Who wouldn't benefit from having more optimism, not just on the field, but in life?
And of course, you can visit the tacticalmindllc.com. And if you use the promo code POWER, you'll get 50% off your initial consultation. So make sure you check in with Nick Fuller of the Tactical Mind and get your mind ready to rock and roll for this season, because it's a roller coaster, Eric. We're up and down, man. But Bishop McCourt, it was interesting seeing the Gibsons in a Bishop McCourt singlet. At least Eric, because we've never seen Mason in one. But it was kind of strange. But I thought they both wrestled really, really well. Anthony Walters in the corner, which is another interesting thing to see. But I think that kind of got overlooked just by the fact that we were so excited just to be out there wrestling and seeing, matches happen. But Mason looked great. And you kind of, the interview's up on Rockfin, but you can see the interview where you're like, I think you're being a little modest, Mason, because he was like,
yeah, he's like, I'm an underdog coming in here as a freshman. No, Mason.
You were like, not. Okay, all right. Let me. That's like Spencer Lee when I'm unseated at the Powerade tournament. I came out from nowhere. No, you didn't. Stop. Mason. We all know who you are. But Eric wrestled well. He beat Grant McKay, who had beaten Ty Linsenbigler the match before that. So. We had said Mason, 52 was a stacked weight class, but he found a way. I was more impressed with his match with Grant McKay than I've been, in years past, because McKay was frustrating him, right? Grant was able to do things that slowed him down and frustrated him. I would say it was pretty even in the first period, but he made really good in-match adjustments to figure out a way to get to his attacks, because there are so many wrestlers that are just one-dimensional, and if they can't get their bread and butter, they don't have an option to go to. Eric was able to do that, and he was able to press the issue so much that he was able to wear him out and was able to get that victory. But as Greg Warnock said on the War Up podcast, they may be seeing each other 3 weeks in a row potentially.
Well, and that was one I talked to Eric off camera after I did the Mason interview, and he told me, he's like, man, I really wanted that when he said I wrestled Grant in freestyle, and he teched me. He said I was just having a really bad day, it didn't go well, and I really wanted another chance to wrestle him again and prove that I was better than that. So that was an important one for him that he was looking forward to.
Yeah, and it was a good match, and I hope we do see it again. There's a lot of good matches there. So, and of course, you can catch all the pool finals and the finals on Rockfin on the PA Power channel. We were trying to get 2 streams going at the same time with 2 cameras, but that didn't work. So we were switching back from match to match, and I mean, we got footage from every match, but it was just some matches we were on there for a little bit longer. So.
Adaptability.
Exactly. Adaptability is the name of the game, Eric. So, hey, that's an hour, man. Time's up. That's been an hour. I think I've had enough. Eric, have you had enough? The fans have had enough.
You got 2 hours in the past 3. So
I've had 2 hours of talking wrestling. I'm at my capacity, right? So, yeah, I'm excited to see what happens this week, because who knows what's going to happen this week. We were supposed to have Waynesburg and Canamac. I think we're going to have Nazareth. Nazareth's been postponing matches a lot recently. They were supposed to have a match with Whitehall, and something else got postponed recently. I'll have to look at Tom Hausnick, the Journalist of the Year, and see what he has out there, because I know he said there was something that was canceled, and he said it would be a real shame if they didn't reschedule it. I want to say it wasn't Becca and Nazareth. Hold on, let me go to. Let me look at my buddy Tom Hausnick. Wednesday's Nazareth versus Becca match is postponed because of COVID concerns at Nazareth. Really hope this one gets rescheduled ASAP. So that's right. That was supposed to be this Wednesday. So we were going to have 2 pretty epic top 5 battles between Canamac, Waynesburg, Becca, and Nazareth. And neither one of them are going to be happening this week. So, but if you stay tuned to us, we will keep you abreast of what's going on, Eric, in the wrestling world. Anything notably coming up your way out your way, Eric?
No, it's hard to keep track. I wanted to ask you, the Brookville duels, are they happening or are they off?
I don't know. I'll have to ask Coach Dave Cleffer, see if what's going on with them. I can shoot him a text here and see if are they supposed to happen this weekend, like the Brookville Ultimate.
I have a
you mean
Chestnut Ridge schedule, and it says 123 rescheduled. Maybe it's Burrell and Fort LaBeouf and Brookville are all at. I don't know if that's at Brookville, but it looks like there's some pretty good double-weight dual meets coming up this weekend, I think. But it's hard to tell reading the schedule what's still on and what's not.
Yeah, you're right. It's really hard. So I'm showing on Brookville's schedule. It says the 23rd Brookville Ultimate Duels. Teams are Brookville, Burrell, Chestnut Ridge, and Fort LaBeouf. Okay,
because mine says rescheduled from 1/9, so it's not.
Okay. Eric, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
Okay. You kind of froze there for a second, Eric. I think your computer's telling you it's time to wrap it up. I may be going. I mean, the 23rd just opened up since we were supposed to host Waynesburg and Wyman Seminary match. Unfortunately, that's not happening. So my weekend opened up a little bit. So maybe I'll head up to Brookville and check out the Ultimate Duels. That would be a blast. We were there.
Yeah, we did that a couple years ago, and it was a great time.
I don't know what your plans are for this weekend, Eric, but hey.
I'm ready. Let's hop in the car and go.
All right, let's do it. I'm going to text my buddy Dave Cleffer and say, roll out the red carpet, brother, because I'm coming. We're going to be there. We expect the full treatment, too. So, all right, Eric, well, great show tonight. Great talking to you. Great broadcasting with you this weekend. It was an awesome time. I even had fun with Tammy, that's saying a lot. So that's things must be going well. But we'll keep you posted on what's going on this week. Okay.
All right, sounds good, Jeff.
All right, Eric, great talking to you. And everyone, thanks for tuning in here tonight on the Power Hour. Of course, make sure you check out all the content that we're giving you on Rockfin at www.rockfin.com/PA Power Wrestling. And we have a lot of matches on there. We've been streaming a lot of matches. We got some content from over this weekend. So make sure you check that out. And of course, make sure you check out our other shows, such as the War Up on the Whippeal podcast. We are going to have our Girl Power podcast. We're doing a test tonight, so that's going to be coming up very soon as well with Lily Scherer. So really excited about that. But in the meantime, keep it classy, wrestling fans.